You are listening to another episode of the Caffeinated Christian Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Willert, and I'm sitting here with, well, not sitting here, but I'm on Zoom with Pastor Mike Rigglesworth and Bradley, the man.
We're virtually sitting down together.
We're all sitting, but we're not in the same room. We'll put it that way. But Bradley, your man with the no last name over on the board. Now, before we toss it to Mike to introduce the topic.
You know what's fun about this is I can see Bradley's last name on my screen, and we are not going to say what it is.
That's Thank you.
Yeah,
that's so true. He actually was given away before he knew his parents, and he never was raised with the last name. So the funny part is he probably doesn't have a last name, but no, that's not true.
Yeah, I was left on the fire department's front step inside of a box.
Exactly. No last name whatsoever.
Yeah, there was a kitten with me, and a dog.
The kitten had the name tag Bradley. That's how he got the name.
Yeah,
so, that's his name. So, but before I toss it over to Mike to introduce the topic, let us do a little of the coffees that we are drinking today. So, Mike, drop that music.
There it is.
Ooh, there it is. So today we have 3 different kinds of coffee since we were in 3 different locations. So I'm going to start with the kind of coffee that I'm drinking today. Today I'm drinking from Green Mountain Coffee. It's a flavor called Brown Sugar Crumble. Brown Sugar Crumble. And it actually tastes like when you have like a coffee cake, the brown sugar with the sugar that's on top. And it's
the best part.
It's pretty
beautiful.
It's pretty dead on to what the name of the coffee is. So that's what I'm drinking today. Mike, what are you drinking?
Today I am drinking a K-Cup from Wellesley Farms. That's BJ's brand of coffee. I'm drinking Donut Shop. It's quite good. And I'm drinking it with the crack cream.
Oh, did you get more or was it left over?
It was the last little bit of crack cream in the fridge. I don't know how fresh it is.
I don't have that down in Florida. I can't get that.
Oh, that's true.
I'm jealous now.
Do they not have tops down there?
Nope.
No tops. Interesting.
We have Wawa.
Well, I've been saving this second cup of coffee for a while, so it's quite good. What are you drinking, Bradley?
I got Tim Hortons because somehow they have it down here in Florida, and it seemed appropriate to buy it with my Wegmans bags.
Why not?
Made sense.
All right, Mike, we're going to toss it over to you. Talk about the topic.
Yes. So today we've got a really good topic, I think. It's an extremely culturally sensitive issue. It's an issue that Christians tend to generate a lot more heat than light on. So this is sort of want to set the airbag off and soften the blow before we sort of crash into the topic that we're going to be talking about today. And I want to share 2 really quick verses that I think should guide all Christians when we're discussing hot button cultural issues, namely our host as well. So we want to reference 1 Peter 3, verse 17, where Peter says, always give a reason for the hope that you have, but do so with gentleness and respect. So any culturally volatile issue, we want to approach somebody who believes differently than we do, who has a different lifestyle than we do, with gentleness and respect, right? And I think of Paul's words in 1 Corinthians 13, that's the famous love chapter. And Paul says, if I have not love, I'm like a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal, right? So we can approach this issue that we're going to talk about today as a sort of clanging gong, where it's all truth, all what I firmly believe Scripture and God teaches, which we should be firm in our convictions, but we could present all truth and no love to people who believe differently than we do. So we need to approach this issue with respect and dignity and care to people who believe differently than we do. But we also need to not bend on the truth as well. So at the time of this recording, it is June 21st, and we are in the middle of Pride Month. And I don't know about you guys, but I have a lot of friends on Facebook who are posting things about Pride Month on either extreme, and I have not seen a nuanced, perspective that tries to bring people of opposing sides together to talk charitably about this. I see a lot of Christians who are just posting things that just are completely affirming of people who are in the LGBTQ plus community, and people who are posting things that are just sort of riling people up who are on the other side, right? People are just saying, hey, you need to repent of this, right? Now, I might agree with people who hold theological conservatism in this area, but I don't know if their post, even though it's right, and I agree with it, if it's particularly helpful or effective, right? So I wanted to take some time to talk through, like, what is the appropriate response of a follower of Jesus to the LGBTQ community, namely during something like Pride Month. So I want to open that up to you guys and see what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can throw a little something in there. First thing is, and I agree with you, Mike, I have been seeing more and more sort of extremes or on the polar opposite positions, and it doesn't seem as if they are willing to, in a sense, have a conversation with each other. It's like, this is the answer, period. You can either get on board or get out of my way, that type of feeling.
Right.
So there's this sort of lack of desire to have a conversation, which I think, even if you're not a follower of Christ, any really true good thinker should want to at least know the coherence or the attempted coherence of a worldview on the other side. So I think that's one of the first problems, their inability to want to even have a conversation. And then second thing is, I think there is too much of one's own self wrapped up in it. And what this is, let me get more nuanced with that.
Sure.
It seems to me on both sides of the coin that they are, I don't want to say afraid, but extremely defensive to the extent that they don't want to have this conversation. This is who I am. Nothing's going to change that, period, whatsoever. I don't want to hear what you have to say. This is my answer. Take it or leave it. And a lot of times it's like, well, I'm going to change you, or I'm going to cause some sort of harm, to whatever degree of harm we want to consider that. And I get it. Like, as a Christian, that's sort of who you are, right? You are part of the body of Christ when we come to that. But we should also be understanding to want to realize that if this is how I sort of form my identity, I should have confidence in the identity to be able to have worldview conversations. And I just don't see that happening on either side of the coin.
Right. All right. Good thoughts. How about you, Bradley?
I don't know, Mike. I haven't seen, and again, I don't use social media hardly at all. But I haven't seen what, like, you're referring to necessarily. Like, I can see what you're talking about, like the reluctance to have a conversation, but I see it more from the side of the pride people. Like, it seems like anytime you have any sort of criticism towards the pride movement, it almost, like, there's always such a huge backlash from it.
Sure.
And not even like a like an attacking, like, criticism, but more like, just like, maybe you shouldn't use this, or maybe you shouldn't say this. Like, any criticism at all is defined as negative. And I haven't seen, I've seen, over the years, like, when the Pride Month thing kind of first happened, it was probably about 2014, 2015, somewhere in there is when they first started doing the Pride Month. It was either post something positive about it, or, like, don't post anything at all.
Right.
And that's kind of how it stayed for a while. And I think that people have, within the last, like, year or two, there's been more of a pushback against it. So I haven't really seen necessarily, like, a lack of wanting to talk about it. More of, this has been thrown at us for so long. Now we're going on the offensive. And I haven't really seen, like, I don't think it's so much that the people that are against the pride community don't want to have a conversation. I think it's more that they have been forced to have a viewpoint and are now saying, no, this is what we actually believe in. So I don't know that it's a reluctance to have a conversation from that specific side. I think it's more of a retaliation for being pushed back for so long.
Yeah.
Right.
May I add to that?
Go ahead.
There's two specific things that, as Bradley was speaking, that I want to add as well. And I know we had Dr. David Limbaugh on the podcast to talk about social media and online sort of presence with Christianity. And the more and more I think about, the more and more I think he's correct in these two categories. One, social media, especially on this topic, doesn't create space to have these it's not conducive to these conversations, right? It doesn't create a kind of space that you can pull someone aside and be like, hey, let's meet for coffee. Let's have a talk on this. I disagree with you, but in order to tell you my point, let's sort of have this conversation. Secondly, it doesn't create an environment to do it. Not only does it not create space, it doesn't create an environment. All it has become are people who think they're the greatest intellectual beings in the world shooting shots at each other. And it's funny because I started a TikTok for my ministry to get some ideas of apologetics and my topics out for my ministry page. And my one buddy's like, the first thing you got to recognize is most of the people on TikTok are going to be young and they're just here kind of to insult for some strange reason. And I'll post a very neutral video on something, and all of a sudden it'll be like, you're an idiot. You have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm like, okay, I have a degree in it, but okay, like, sorry.
Clearly, you know better than me.
Yeah, clearly. So yeah, it doesn't create space that's conducive for this conversation, and it doesn't create environment to be able to have the correct conversation. Yet, for some strange reason, it seems social media is a predominant space and environment in which we try to have these things, and it just seems sort of strange to me.
Well, and it's really catalyzed this movement and other social movements in particular. But I think social media has also impeded our ability to have those charitable discussions. It comes back to what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13, like there's a whole bunch of clanging happening. There's not hardly any charitable dialogue happening between people who believe differently in this area. And social media has done nothing but amplify the division between the two. So
yeah, exactly.
The clanging is pretty bad.
To even go with that, I mean, even the social media companies like force their own views on you. So for example, for YouTube, if you use the wrong pronouns to identify somebody, you can get a suspension on YouTube. That's happened to multiple people. It's a 7-day suspension. And if you do it again, you can get a strike on your account, and 3 strikes and you're out. So, I mean, for YouTube alone, I mean, I don't know necessarily what Facebook or Instagram or any of those other platforms do. I know Twitter is probably a bit different now, but I haven't used any of those in quite some time. But I mean, for the longest time, I remember on Instagram, you'd be scrolling through and maybe you get some things that were, against the LGBTQ, and then you would just get advertisements or like accounts that you don't even follow that are pro LGBTQ that just kind of override your feed. And, so it's not even like a lack of being able to have a conversation. It's like, even if you don't like pay attention to these topics at all, it's still forced upon you. And even if you like, maybe you didn't know about like the pronoun thing or something like that, and you were just a random average Joe using YouTube for the first time, it can severely impact your media experience. And I think it's, as a media student, like it's really dangerous to, restrict media access to people because of a certain viewpoint.
Sure.
Yeah, it was funny.
To be clear on that too, whether I agree with the censoring or not, I just would like to point that out as well.
Yeah. And what I do, like obviously I'm a pastor and I hold specific viewpoints theologically. I hold to a very specific understanding of what Scripture teaches with regard to sexuality, gender. I hold to the historical Orthodox views of what the church has taught since its inception. But I also do chaplain work where I am doing work outside of the realm of the church. I'm going into workplaces where employees have children who are questioning their gender identity and wanting to have, or they're dating somebody who's doing this. So the whether we want it to or not, this topic is sort of being thrusted upon the church, and the church now needs to sort of respond to it. So I just got off of a call not long ago before I talked with you guys with a whole group of chaplains who are just like, hey, you know what? I'm really struggling with this right now because I want to love somebody and I want to hold on to my Christian convictions, but I don't know how to navigate those things. There's this tension-filled space that I'm constantly living in right now, and I don't know how to resolve it. And I gave a devotional thought to this team of like 30, 40 chaplains this afternoon, and one of the things that I shared in the thought was that we can't make it our goal as followers of Jesus to be inoffensive, because the gospel by its very nature is going to be offensive because Christ calls sinners to repentance. But of course we have to be loving and we have to be gracious and kind. We shouldn't be a jerk. But we have to navigate those spaces carefully because we are now in the digital space. That's a whole different discussion we can have around YouTube's policies around, what they allow and what they don't allow. Raises lots of questions about free speech and things like that. But what came to mind for me when I was having this conversation with other chaplains was, we have to remember that when we are interacting with somebody who's part of that community, somebody who is gay or lesbian, claims to be, somebody who claims to be the opposite gender, we have to recognize that we are entering into their space and we have to navigate that carefully, right? So let me just ask you this, guys. How do you approach someone who has same-sex attraction or who claims to be a different gender or claims to be non-binary? Like what do you do with that?
Like if someone comes up to me or if
or if you find yourself in a conversation with them.
Yeah. So the first thing I guess I do is just ask a lot of questions. I know we kind of had a little bit of this in the one conversation we had, I think last year on Christ-like communication, on like different steps that we take as our group when we have conversations with people who have different worldviews. But the first thing I like to ask a lot of questions, because sometimes, first of all, I want to make sure they're understanding what they believe. I've met a lot of people where they'll say some specific things and in sort of representing their belief, they go, wait a minute, that didn't make sense. Hold on. Maybe this is what I think, right? So I want to make sure they're on their understanding, and I want to be on the same page, because the last thing I want to do is be having a conversation where the conversation doesn't need to be had, right? I want to be able to know where to have the conversation, how to address the importance of specific topics within their worldview. So the first thing I like to do is just ask a ton of questions. And then one thing I like to do in the background, and there's a lot of things I can say this, but I'll give you one more, is I automatically assume that if I'm having a conversation with someone, and let's say it's the first time I've ever met this someone, I am most likely not going to change their mind. I've had conversations where it's a friend of a friend and I've met them for the first time, and they say something, they ask my opinion, and we kind of go back and forth. I'm not leaving that coffee shop or that restaurant thinking I have to win this and they need to change their mind, and if I don't, it's unsuccessful, right? The whole point is to, as was it Turk? That's not Turk that says it. Kokel that says it, put a pebble in their shoe, right? Where get them to understand sort of why we think what we think, that the Christian worldview is coherent, right? Because one of the things that I have come to learn in my research is there are a lot of worldviews that are coherent within itself, but in comparison to other worldviews, they're not coherent within that worldview system. So a lot of times it's like, hey, this is why I think my worldview system makes more sense of reality and is more coherent to the way things actually are and the outside evidence. and I think it has the step up above yours, but I'm not going to say you are just irrational, right?
Right.
And so it's sort of understanding that this might take a very long time if I'm going to persuade this person to think elsewhere. And it starts with just asking questions and learning about who the person is.
Right. How about
Well,
you,
yeah,
Bradley?
to add to what Ryan was saying too, for me, like I think it's pretty ineffective to go online to pursue a rational conversation. Similar to
Yep.
if like let's say there was a pride parade at your city, and you went out there with a sign that says like repent, you're going to hell. Like
Yep.
I feel like it's in the same vein as that. Like I would never approach somebody off the street and just say your opinion's wrong. So first of all, I'd have to know said person or have some understanding of said person to um, even begin to comment or make a question, or a rational argument against them. I try not to find people that I don't know very well. I try not to like engage on a more discussion based level with them. I try to get to know the person first. And like
Yep.
Ryan said, asking questions is a great way to go about that. And I actually had a very I'll use this experience as an example. My one of my really good friends, his fiance, she uses that they them pronouns. She considers herself non-binary. And
Okay.
Now this is a close friend of mine, and he got mad when I didn't use the proper pronouns that she had requested. And she his fiance was not there. But I just told him, look, from my point of view, using improper pronouns, which she has requested, would be lying to her identity.
Yep.
And I said, that's just something that my church has taught me. And so, Mike, no offense, but I blamed you on this. I didn't mention you by name, but I just said my pastor, um, and this is a great cop out for any Christian, but you can just say, my pastor or my
Blame your
bishop or my
pastor.
priest or whoever is like kind of in charge, my elder, has told me that this is kind of the Christian worldview. And, by
Mhm.
me using said pronouns, it's causing me to lie, which is a sin against God for
Yeah.
me. And so
Mhm.
I can't use those pronouns because of that. But I want you to understand that, I'm not doing it to, belittle you or your fiance. I'm just
Mhm.
doing that because for me, it's sinning. And we were able to get like a really great conversation out of that. And, we both, walked away with a better understanding of each other. And I think it was like Ryan said, like placing that pebble in your shoe, like, oh, he's not doing it to be mean. He's not doing it to belittle my fiance or, make her feel
Yeah.
unloved or anything like that. It's a matter of part of your religion.
Yeah, so it goes back to what I said. According to my worldview system, this is how I believe and this is how I feel.
Right.
According to your worldview system, this is what you believe, this is what you feel. And so it seems very strange that I have to change mine if I can't demand you change yours.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if we're willing to go, okay, I'm going to work with each other's worldview and not get angry and have these conversations, like, yes, you might demand this, but I understand why it doesn't make sense in yours. So I'm not going to demand you to follow the system that contradicts yours until we have those conversations of, hey, is our worldview correct? And let's
Right.
start with the fundamental sort of concepts and ideas and talk about that, because a lot of times some people have been persuaded, like, hey, maybe my worldview fundamentally isn't correct, which then filters
Right.
outward to these other types
Mhm.
of situations. So
Yeah.
I just don't
Yeah.
see why both sides can't work with each other in understanding that sometimes they do and don't do things according
Right.
to the coherence of what they believe, and we shouldn't force them, um, either parties, right, to a
Mhm.
certain degree, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah. And
Sure.
I go
Yeah.
along.
and for
Yeah.
me too, I never really seek out these conversations either. Just on a personal level, I don't ever really go looking for a fight. But if it comes up, then I'll address it. But like, I, I, I mean, like that conversation just kind of happened. So you know, I'd say like if you're looking to have this conversation with somebody, for like I said, first of all, make sure you know them a decent bit.
Mhm.
But
yeah.
also don't go looking for a fight. Some people are wired that way, and that's okay. But you know, if you're like the average Christian, I'd say most of the time probably don't go looking for that fight. You know,
Yeah.
kind of get to know the person, and if it comes up, then address it.
Yeah. Yeah. You need to develop some relational currency with somebody before you actually decide that you're going to approach this conversation. It's not the first conversation you have with somebody who's in the LGBT community. And we were just having this conversation in the chaplain cohort that I was telling you guys about. But we, our EDO, he oversees all of us. He said something that I think was really important. Like, okay, if you find that you are unable to respond to somebody, even just talks about the subject, let alone is in that lifestyle with grace and with mercy and with compassion, like you need to go to God and you need to really have a heart check. You need to spend time with him and ask him to check your heart. And what happens is, and you guys know this, you've seen this over the last 3 years, and you guys grew up in evangelical church culture. Oftentimes what we do is we conflate our views, our personal views, with our political views, and they're not necessarily correct. Now, I'm not talking about our theology and what we believe about the scriptures, but we take the approach that we have towards the LGBTQ community and we assume, all right, this is the right approach. This is the way I need to do it. And I think we need to be self-reflective. We need to be, as James says, slow to anger, slow to speak, quick to listen. Like there's so much wisdom in the scriptures that we need to glean from. And part of what is informing the volatility of our age, not just in the LGBTQ conversation, but in every conversation, is the fact that we live in an age that has a lot of information. We are able to acquire a lot of knowledge, but very little, if any, of that knowledge is actually translated into wisdom, right? And I think that's part of the problem, is we're throwing out our viewpoints, our facts, and the LGBTQ community has their set of facts. I don't think that they necessarily have the correct ones, or that they're even facts at all. But I think there's that dynamic taking place where we've got the set of information that we just want to throw out at the other side, but we're not actually conversing with one another and seeking to understand one another. What we're trying to do is really just trying to convince the other person of our perspective, and that's a losing battle. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to read something from Peter Kreeft, which, Ryan, I'm sure you know who he is.
Yep.
Great thinker, great scholar, great theologian. But he said this about sex. He said, sex is the effective religion of our culture. Sex is like a religion, not only because it is objectively holy in itself, but also because it gives us subjectively a foretaste of heaven, of the self-forgetting, self-transcending, self-giving that is what our deepest hearts are designed for, long for, and will not be satisfied until they have. And I could say with confidence, it is a taste of heaven. Sex is wonderful. It is beautiful. But the challenge with when we approach the LGBTQ community is that if we're going to say to somebody who's a Christian and says, I am actively participating in this lifestyle, we have to call them to deny the possibility of ever experiencing what Kreeft is talking about, that self-transcending, self-giving experience. And we have to be honest and say, look, you're going to have this longing for that your entire life. And you're not going to be able to fulfill that in this life. I don't know what that's going to look like in the next life either. So we're telling somebody with same-sex attraction, there's no hope for them ever experiencing that in a way that honors God. And that's hard for them to swallow. And we have to recognize that there's a lot of pain that comes with that.
Mhm.
right? I'm not saying that holding that conviction is wrong, but acknowledge the emotional and mental anguish that causes somebody. Saying like, there's this part of you that you can never express, right? And I think that's part of the tension in the conversation in this. What do you guys think about that?
I don't know if I would agree with that, Mike. And here's why, because I think that everybody has a certain sin that they deal with, correct? Like,
Sure.
like
I'm
maybe
not. Yeah, I don't think you heard what I said, Bradley.
I did. I heard what you
Okay.
said, but I was just gonna say I don't think it's necessarily like I mean we all have something that we have to deny in order to follow Christ. You know, Christ says to pick up your cross daily to follow Him.
Mhm.
So I don't think that necessarily, you know, like I understand what you're saying with, you know, it's a longing that you'll never be able to succeed in this life, but I mean the drug addict also has to deal with that. The
Sure.
alcohol addiction
I'm not
person has to
disagreeing
deal with
with
that
you at
as
all,
well.
Bradley.
So I don't know that, because there's a different kind of fulfillment that you can reach by denying yourself.
Mhm.
And so I don't think that it's, you know, I don't think it's more of a um it's hard for them to let go of, you know, that longing. I think
Mhm.
what it is it's propped up so much, and it almost acts like its own religion. So it's kind of like a denial of what they perceive as truth, and not
Right.
necessarily more like a
Right.
physical like feeling. I think it's more of like a denial of perception that's
Mhm.
causing them to, you know, lash
Mhm.
out or retaliate like that. Like it,
Mhm.
you know, as a Christian, you know, it's hard to, when somebody attacks the Bible or something like that, it's hard to you know, realize that they're not attacking you, they're attacking God, and you
Oh, for
know,
sure.
God can handle that. But
Right.
for the religion, you know, quote unquote religion of the pride and the LGBTQ, like you're not necessarily attacking the religion. To them, you're attacking them as a person. And so I think
Mhm.
that it's
Mhm.
more than what you said. I think that there's
Yeah.
more to it than just a
Mhm.
feeling or a longing. I think there's a lot more nuance to it.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with you, Bradley. But what did I say that you didn't agree with? Can you
Oh no, I
articulate
just
that?
think that you didn't add enough. That's all.
Well, there's of course there's more that can be said about it, but I'm just saying as Christians, we need to recognize them and try to understand them from their perspective. That's all that I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
So
actually going to
that's
say,
what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Bradley, it kind of sounds like you agree with Mike.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know
Um,
if you fully heard what I
Well, I
said.
mean,
You wanted to expand on what I said. I get that, but
yeah.
okay. Well, I just
I'm not denying anything that you're saying, Bradley, and I fully agree with what you're talking about. And I think there's a lot lying underneath that person. So just because I omitted certain things doesn't mean that I don't agree with you. I fully do, but we've
Yeah.
taken so much time, I think, with coming up with our theological arguments and what we believe to be true, and those are all good things. But in the process, I don't think I don't think we've adopted the posture that Jesus wants us to adopt with that community, where we say, "Hey, there's a real sacrifice here that they're going to have to make." Like you said, Bradley, they need to take up their cross and follow Jesus. Absolutely. And that cross is going to look different depending on who you are. I have sexual impulses that I would like to indulge in that I have to sacrifice. Now, and I have other things that I want to sacrifice. I can just live life however I want to live. Absolutely. But yeah, I don't disagree with you, Bradley. I think you're spot on.
okay.
But
I
yeah.
misunderstood what you're saying too. I'm sorry about that.
Mhm. Yep. No, that's fine.
Yeah, so let me get this, see if I got this straight, Mike, from see if I can kind of sum it up to what you said.
Sure.
How I often understand it is the Christian who goes in to sort of win a conversation, right? Here are a handful of verses. I win, done, right? This is
Right.
what it says, do it. But
Hmm.
that sort of extracts the person from the equation, and the longings and desires and what they feel intrinsic to their nature, and a kind of love, a kind of relationship, a kind of feeling, a kind of sensuality, whatever it might be that they cannot join in, that seems everyone else can have, that there's like this black void, this dark black hole that they will never be able to achieve. And just spouting off propositions to win an argument doesn't do it enough, right? Where what it needs to do is, we need in this conversation to figure out, I think what Bradley was pointing to here is there's that hole, there's that gap. What is it that is going to successfully sort of either fill that hole or that gap, or make that hole in that gap worth it?
Right.
And I think I have seen too many times in what social media, going back to the original thought, it does none of that, because it's to win the conversation, it's to spout this verses, it's to have these arguments, and it doesn't successfully reach the person on the personal level. And I've seen pastors from the pulpit terrible at this. And that's why I think having conversations, having a kind of relationship with people who disagree with you on this topic is extremely important in the matter.
Well, to build off what
that makes sense,
Bradley,
okay.
For sure. And Bradley, to build off the point that you were making before, I think what we need to do is we need to convince might not be the right word, but we need to sort of teach, and as best as we can, model for people in this community that the celibate life isn't a half life, right? And so some of this overlaps with how we've dealt with single people in the church, right? Like, the church in general has not had a very good theology of singleness, where the two most, I think we talked about this in one of the episodes that is going to be coming out in short order. Paul and Jesus were the most influential figures in Christianity, and neither one of them were married, right? And so we treat marriage as this ultimate thing that people need to have. And then with the LGBTQ community, we're just saying, you know what? Like, you're never going to live a good or fulfilling and joyous experience as a human, because you'll never be able to get this. Well, it's true, there's pain that comes with them not being able to express their sexuality in the way they want to. It does not mean that it's a life without joy or meaning or hope or purpose, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that you wouldn't, like what Ryan was saying, to build off of what he said. I don't think as a Christian you should approach anybody with just a routine amount of verses that shows them what's wrong with your life. Like, I mean, I wouldn't talk to somebody that's depressed and say, the Bible says, if you have Jesus, you won't be depressed. I wouldn't just say, or, depression is like a lack of faith or anything like that. Like, I wouldn't just run up with those things. Or somebody that's addicted to like some type of drug or something like that. Like, I wouldn't, run up with 4 Bible verses and say, this is what's wrong with your life. So I think what the church needs to do, a little bit better is maybe not getting these like one-liner like Christian quotes, and stop using these one-liners, and maybe start like actually talking to people, right, or engaging with people.
What a novel idea.
It being a church, something like that. And also, not being a church that's inward focused on like, your building and, your worship service or anything like that, but being a church that's outwardly focused on the community around you and, the people that you interact with every day.
Yeah. I also, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I also think, to what I said earlier, I think a lot of times we place, like I said, this emptiness or this void or this ability to not do something that seems so intrinsic to our nature. We almost make these claims that if you become in relationship with Christ, all of that will be successfully filled and joy will fill that gap, right? And one, I don't know any verse in scripture that is going to just completely eradicate everyone's dispositions perfectly here. I just don't know that verse. Show it to me, I would say. But what I think we need to do, and I think the church is often bad at this, is a theology of hope. A theology of hope of heaven in relation to eternity, because I think you can go to someone and go, yes, this is going to stink. Like you said, carrying a cross, right?
Mhm. Yep.
It assumes, given the context of what carrying
Yep.
a cross means, it's going to be not a joyous thing, right?
Yep.
But is there a hope of something in the future that will make this worthwhile?
Right.
And I think what we have done is we've made heaven a very we've lacked the understanding of greatest being theology. We lack the understanding of what eternity means in relationship to our Creator. We lack the understanding of the value of being with Him in there, right? Which will, in my mind, sort of make it worth it.
Right.
And
Right.
I don't think we ever approach it to that degree. Because I know a lot of things where I go, hey, this diet stinks. But when I'm looking like this and I can wear these clothes and I feel better, do you know what? It
Right.
was worth it. And I just think we don't ever approach topics like that to this degree. It's almost like you love Jesus, it'll be better. That's
Mhm.
kind of how we approach it. And I just think that's not a realistic way to approach a lot of these
Right.
topics.
And there's a lot of, praying the gay away and all that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
if you go through these steps, then you're going to be free of all these urges. You're going to be attracted to somebody of the opposite sex. Now that does happen. Like I think of Jackie Hill Perry, who
Sure.
she was in the lesbian, gay lesbian lifestyle for many years. And she came to Christ. She came out of it. She's married to a man. So God does call people to that, but God does call people in that lifestyle out of it to be celibate.
Yeah.
He does do that. But I think, kind of alluding to what you talked about just a second ago there, Ryan, like as believers, we're to be about bringing heaven to earth. Like what we do as the church, it's supposed to be this glimpse, this foreshadowing of what heaven is going to be like.
Yeah.
Right. And what does that look like for somebody who's called out of this community and called out of this lifestyle? And what better models the lifestyle of Jesus, right? Is it the person who just indulges in the desires that they have just because that's how they feel? Or is it somebody who lays them down and says, hey, I believe Jesus calls me to set these things down and live a life that runs counter to the culture.
Yeah.
And, and so I think, I don't know who it was who said it, but they said something that was profound. And he said, I can live without sex, but I can't live without love. Right. Like,
right.
Like it is possible to live a life without sex, but we've treated sex as this ultimate thing that, like, you don't experience this, like you're never going to be happy. You're never going to be fulfilled. You're never going to have any joy whatsoever. And it's just simply not true. I've had a lot of wonderful, joy-filled experiences without sex. Like I have. And
well, sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
No, one of the things I hear often, and it's sort of like this Christianese type logo, and I hear it within the college ministry all the time. And it's like, and I get it, but it's also extremely false. Where they're like, following Jesus doesn't cost you anything, right? Like, I get it. What they're trying to get at is you can't do anything to legally justify yourself in the heavenly courtroom. I get it, right? But that is not to say it doesn't cost you a lot.
Incorrect.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
It I don't know any believer who realistically can't go, it would be fun to do this, but I'm not doing this. It cost me this, or it cost me this, or it cost me this. I think a lot of times the church has this sort of verbal usage of it's free. Don't worry, it doesn't cost you anything. It's easy. It's that no, I don't know where that is.
Yeah.
And to tell, and I think this goes for everyone. There's a cost to it. Now, there's not a cost to being redeemed by his blood because that was free by his grace, but there's a cost to follow him. That's the difference.
Yep.
And we as a church are terrible at relating that. There's a cost. And I don't know, once again, I don't know any Christian that hasn't had to pay some sort of cost, whether it be greater or lesser than other people. I don't know, but it's not, it's free by his blood, but it's not free to follow him.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys,
and that comes from a non-determinist, right? You might be a determinist and argue elsewise, but that's a different conversation.
For sure. Oh yeah. Yeah, lots of offshoots that we could have as far as conversations go. So any closing thoughts that we wanted to provide before we sort of wrap things up? I have a few, but I wanted to open it up for you guys first.
Yeah, I got one last comment to make, but before I toss it to Bradley, it's tough, right? One, social media is garbage to have this conversation. I'm just going to blatantly put that out there. Try not to, right? Just try not to. It's not successful. It's not really helpful ever. Stop posting on other people's pictures, just quoting verses. It's not doing anything. I want to say that if you truly desire that other people come to the knowledge of redemption, no matter what sort of category they fall into, you should also desire to be the kind of person that walks in the same manner as Christ, which then has a way that we converse, a way and a style of conversation, of environment where you like to have these conversations. We just need to be better. We just need to be better.
Right.
And I think that that's all across the board. And I continue to try. I make mistakes. I'm sure all of us in this room we stink sometimes. But if we want to be like him, that requires a specific kind of heart posture, which requires a specific type of strategy. And I do not think the way we often go about it is very helpful or successful to any degree.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I would say, like Ryan, I also would say try to avoid using social media for changing people's minds. I would say if you want to post something on your own page, like that's fine, but I wouldn't go on to somebody else's like forum or anything like that and post something, because I it's not doing anything. Let's be honest. I mean, you can do it about football too. Like if you go on and you go on to a different team's like Twitter or something like that, and you post something from their rival, like it's not going to change any minds at all. Like it's just going to make people mad. So I would avoid using social media. I would also say that in your personal life, that Christians in general should be more bold in their faith. But I would say that there's a difference between being bold and being offensive. So I think that you shouldn't shy away from, pronouncing yourself a Christian, or, taking stands to affirm that you are a Christian and affirm your lifestyle choices, then showing that you're different from the world. But you don't have to do it in an offensive way or manner. Like there's a difference between how you can do it. And not saying like offensive is in like you'll never offend anybody, but being more aggressive, or, being just flat out rude. You don't have to do that to be bold in your faith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I would agree with you. To add a little bit to what you would say, Ryan, I would say social media is generally not a good vehicle to express your opinion on this issue. But I would say if you feel the urge to say something on this, pray before you post. And if you do decide, like, I'm really feeling compelled by the Holy Spirit to say something about this, okay, pray about it, right? And if there's still that restlessness the day after, right, the week after, like, if you do decide to post something on social media, which again, I would kind of veer towards not doing that, right? I would agree with you guys. But I would say it should be as a way to start a conversation, not end one.
Correct.
It should be in the most gracious, kind, and charitable way that you can. not compromising on the truth of what you believe as a follower of Jesus, to be, like Bradley said, to be bold, but to also recognize that your boldness for Jesus, even when it's expressed in the most charitable and kind way possible, it's still going to very well offend somebody. So expect somebody to be on the offensive when you do post something on a digital landscape that is just naturally designed to provoke hostility. It's just how it is.
Yeah, and I'm also just for heads up, I'm not against posting something that or posting the truth online. I think that there's a good way to do it and there's a bad way to do it, and I think that most people do the bad way. So I think that as long as you do it in a way that, first of all, like you said, Mike, opens up a conversation, but also in a way that is biblically honoring to, like, you're following the guidelines of how the Bible outlines you should live, even on a digital space. I think that that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I could say one last word to Christians who feel the tension of this during Pride Month, you see people who are posting, you see people who they're Christians, but they're coming out as affirming, or they're non-affirming, but they're not posting things that are incredibly helpful. We feel the tension with you. That's a tough space to live in. Just know that you're not alone. Just lean into the Holy Spirit, trust Him, and be prepared. Like Peter says, always be prepared to give the reason for the hope you have. Do so with gentleness and respect. Usually that's not online. But we're with you guys. We love you, listeners, and we've got more great content coming your way. Until next time, we'll look forward to seeing you then. But in the meantime, if you can give us a like and subscribe to wherever you get your podcast, be sure to do that. You could also find us on Facebook or on Instagram at the Caffeinated Christian Podcast. And if you guys have suggestions for future shows, topics you'd like us to discuss, guests you'd like to have us on, feel free to reach out to us on social media. That's at the Caffeinated Christian Podcast. You won't see a lot of posts from us. We don't do a great job keeping up on that, but we are pretty responsive if you do reach out to us there. All right. Until next time, have a great day. All right. Good.
Perfect.
Okay. It was fun.
Yeah. So
I
we'll toss out some ideas, Mike. I'll be in studio next week with you. So we'll do that. And then we'll think of a topic. I have a book that I'm almost done that I don't know if I can finish it. Probably I can outline it quickly and we can talk about it. It's a resurrection book. I think that'd be a fun little quick. I kind of like the book reviews too. It's like, hey, like we did with the one guest speaker. It's like, hey, let's talk about this. So how he outlines it type thing. So
yeah, I did like that too.
Awesome.
So
I also,
I don't
for
wanna,
me,
yeah, go ahead. Quick.
I have the last week of July. I'm free all week. I have the whole week off from school.
Are you coming to Buffalo?
Oh no.
Oh, okay.
No,
it's Ryan, isn't it the same week you're kind of bring that guest on?
Yeah, July 25th.
Oh, the 25th.
Tuesday.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
Kirk McGregor, and then Meeting on Main is the 27th.
Cool.
Oh, okay. So I'll just rip that from you.
Yeah.
Right.
And so what we'll do too, Bradley, is the 25th is the scholar on middle knowledge. So we'll do that as like a cherry on top of like, hey, next week episode, we're going to actually have like one world-renowned scholar talking about it, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Because I'm going to go into it, but I'm not going to go into it like his book does, right? And so I think that'd be kind of a cool topping to it. So
cool. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Well, I got to get going here, but
awesome, guys. I'll text you later.
Good hanging out with you guys.
All right. Talk to you guys later.
We'll see you.